the Gary Sutton Show. Great day to you. I hope that you're all ready to have a wonderful day leading right into the weekend. I am Gary Sutton, and glad to be with you this morning. We've got a lot to get done today, and let's get right to it this morning with Clark Hodges, financial strategist with Hodges Capital. And good morning, Clark. How are you?
I'm good. Anything on my mind, I might just call back.
Well, you can do that anytime. You can even say it here, anything that's on your mind, just as long as it's, family friendly. That's all there is to it. Hey, I was reading a piece this morning in the Weekly Standard, and it said in 2009, President Obama predicted his policies would produce 4.2% growth in 2013, more than double the actual anemic growth rate of 1.9%, which we had. Since making that projection, President Obama has had much of his economic agenda implemented. The $870 billion stimulus plan, we all remember, Dodd-Frank financial regulations, Obamacare, restrictions on American energy, $1.7 trillion in higher taxes, unfettered regulation, and all those policies in place. Our debt has now soared from $10.6 trillion to $17.5 trillion on the promise that this would stimulate the economy and produce prosperity. Yet, we're left with not a whole lot of the prosperity and all the debt. This was according to the Republican side of the Senate Budget Committee. Do you see it that way? I mean, he had his policies put into place. They said, okay, here we go. And yet we don't see the numbers jumping out there. We see a much slower than anticipated growth rate. What's going on here, Clark?
Well, I think two things. Obviously, the policies didn't work and don't work. And, that's a debate on either side of the aisle that you could have, but they're going to hang their hat on the stock market's doing well. And it goes back to what I like to say is it doesn't matter what the landscape is, business owners are going to adjust to it. And that's why the stock market's doing well. Even in a slow growth economy, they're able to adjust to the landscape that's been laid out for them and make a profit. And I think we're also in an interesting time in our history because I think full employment is a lot less than people, is going to be a lot higher number than people are used to in the past. We're in the high sixes unemployment. I think full employment probably is the high fives, maybe low sixes. And our economy is going through a big adjustment on these new companies, these new type of companies that are getting a lot of value. You look at the social media type companies that have been bought out for billions and billions of dollars, and now there's a lot of capital being put towards that industry and industries like it. Look at what Tesla's done with their automobile and things like that. So we're in a kind of an interesting time, and our economy's changing, but I do think the policies are failed.
It's interesting, though, that you mentioned like Tesla, and we talk about some of the other green jobs we're putting it out there and some of the changes. And it seems like we're in a time where a lot of those changes are taking place, and yet there are no rewards to be reaped yet, and they're not really competitive yet on the market for people to buy. Thus, the economy does not grow at the rate that you'd expect it to grow. So one has to say, okay, do we just suffer through this transitional period, or is the way the transitional period is being conducted wrong?
There are people making money at it. It's the investors that are making money at it. These new companies are getting a lot of money and capital, and the people that are investing in it didn't work and don't work. And, that's a debate on either side of the aisle that you could have, but they're going to hang their hat on the stock market's doing well. And it goes back to what I like to say is it doesn't matter what the landscape is, business owners are going to adjust to it. And that's why the stock market's doing well. Even in a slow growth economy, they're able to adjust to the landscape that's been laid out for them and make a profit. And I think we're also in an interesting time in our history because I think full employment is a lot less than people, is going to be a lot higher number than people are used to in the past. We're in the high sixes unemployment. I think full employment probably is the high fives, maybe low sixes. And our economy and private equity and venture capitalists are in there making tons of money.
Now, the point that I guess I was trying to make, though, maybe a little clearer, is that if the middle class, or let's say the rest of us as Americans, I hate the word middle class, let's say the rest of us as Americans aren't feeling like we're also involved in this, isn't that one of the drags then on the whole economy and one of the reasons we only see that 1.9% growth?
Yeah, that's definitely the reason. You've got a lot of businesses that, like we've said before, they're sitting on cash. They're big. They've got got a little growth. Their growth is anemic, but they're okay with it. They're not growing organically as much as they'd like, but they're okay with it because they've got plenty of cash to deploy to go out and purchase that growth in another type of company and add it to their portfolio, so to speak. So, but it is an anemic growth, and some people are adjusting to it and making money, and some people aren't. The growth rate will get better, but it won't be anytime soon. You're looking at 2006, 16, 17, 18 before I think we're at those kinds of growth levels that he had indicated by didn't work and don't work. And, that's a debate on either side of the aisle that you could have, but they're going to hang their hat on the stock market's doing well. And it goes back to what I like to say is it doesn't matter what the landscape is, business owners are going to adjust to it. And that's why the stock market's doing well. Even in a slow growth economy, they're able to adjust to the landscape that's been laid out for them and make a profit. And I think we're also in an interesting time in our history because I think full employment is a lot less than people, is going to be a lot higher number than people are used to in the past. We're in the high sixes unemployment. I mean, I think full employment probably is the high fives, maybe low sixes. And our economy, and they're still scared to put their money at risk, and they should not be, but they are. And the reality is, every time the market takes a little dip, there's a little bit more money get off the sideline and come into the market because they're looking at it as a buying opportunity. But you really have to have some risk in your portfolio to make ends meet when you're trying to keep up with inflation. And these bonds that people put money in that they think are safe are not keeping up with inflation. And so that's a real problem down the road for the people who are not participating in the market and they're sitting on the sideline. They've missed a huge run-up from the low of 2009.
Clark, I want to ask you about something I've never asked you about before, and I think it does have a big effect on the economy. But yesterday, Vice President Joe Biden said in a speech to the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce's 2014 Legislative Summit, he said this, that 11 million illegal aliens in the United States today, quote, are already Americans, unquote. He said 11 million people living in the shadows, I believe, are already American citizens. These people
didn't work and don't work. And, that's a debate on either side of the aisle that you could have, but they're going to hang their hat on the stock market's doing well. And it goes back to what I like to say is it doesn't matter what the landscape is, business owners are going to adjust to it. And that's why the stock market's doing well. Even in a slow growth economy, they're able to adjust to the landscape that's been laid out for them and make a profit. And I think we're also in an interesting time in our history because I think full employment is a lot less than people, is going to be a lot higher number than people are used to in the past. We're in the high sixes unemployment. I mean, I think full employment probably is the high fives, maybe low sixes. And our economy, they should go through a process. But then you get down to the real world and get out of the gray, and you recognize, living in Texas, I do, for example, that these workers have built a lot of America. They've done the jobs that a lot of people would not do. And when I see a worker that I know is illegal, it doesn't even cross my mind that there's some sort of burden on me as an American citizen, tax-wise or other, that they should not be doing what they're doing. I respect their work ethic and what they're willing to do, and they, just like every other human, I believe, want to take care of their families and better their lives, and this is the land of opportunity to do that. And living in Mexico is not what it's cracked up to be, obviously, and there's really not a middle class per se in Mexico. So I don't blame them for wanting to be in America, and I don't look at them as somebody that's taking a piece of pie out of my kitchen,
right,
and didn't work and don't work. And, that's a debate on either side of the aisle that you could have, but they're going to hang their hat on the stock market's doing well. And it goes back to what I like to say is it doesn't matter what the landscape is, business owners are going to adjust to it. And that's why the stock market's doing well. even in a slow growth economy, they're able to adjust to the landscape that's been laid out for them and make a profit. And I think we're also in an interesting time in our history because I think full employment is a lot less than people, is going to be a lot higher number than people are used to in the past. We're in the high sixes unemployment. I mean, I think full employment probably is the high fives, maybe low sixes. And our economy has had from quote-unquote illegals here in our state.
We're talking with Clark Hodges, financial strategist at Hodges Capital. I know what you're saying. If I were on the other side of the border, I think I'd be trying to get in here too. I don't blame them for trying to do that, and yet at the same time, I guess one of the problems I have, I heard a state representative candidate in Florida the other week say, well, if they're not allowed to come in, who's going to, make our beds? Who's going to fix our food? Who's going to go out there and hoe our crops and all that kind of stuff? And I'm thinking, is that the way we see these people then coming in? So they become kind of almost a sub-slavery kind of situation. So they don't have the same rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and yet we're willing to say, okay, let's form some other set of rules for these people so we can kind of keep them where they're at. I mean, I look at it from that side too. And I also agree with you. From a human standpoint, if I see someone on the street that's hurt, I'm not going to run over and check every label that they have before I give them a hand. Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you Republican, Democrat, left or right? Are you illegal, legal? You're going to help the person. But from the standpoint of what it does to our economy in the long run, we've seen a lot of factory jobs and so forth go down over the years because there are employers out there that cheat. And I guess that's the thing that bothers me on that side of it, that people do cheat and that we don't really seem to have a good idea about how to remain a nation of laws, and yet at the same time, deal with this whole situation.
In business today, and it's been this way for years, when you find the low-cost provider of any industry, that usually is somebody that you'll migrate to because you want to save money on whatever you're purchasing.
Right.
And the illegals in Texas, have brought the low cost. They're the low-cost provider for hard labor. And I've used that to my advantage, but I never look at them as somebody below me or a slave type situation because I'm paying them a fair wage in their mind, and I'm getting a service done, and they're getting what they want out of it. And we're all equal. God created us all the same.
Couldn't agree with you more.
And our circumstances are what makes us different. But if you are trying to get to the finish line, so to speak, of life and get there and compete, and your path is different than my path, who am I to prevent you from doing it? And at the same time, who is anybody to prevent me from buying that service from that individual and using it to my advantage?
And we're saying as long as they're legal, right?
Yeah. But
we're going to take a very quick break.
Who goes out and says, hey, are you legal or are you illegal?
Yeah,
they just buy the service.
Yeah, okay, we're going to come right back. I also have a call for you this morning, Clark, so we're going to come right back with Clark Hodges, financial strategist with Hodges Capital. Mac in Hanover has a call on this topic, and I've got a thought on this topic as well. All here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Back right after this.